Hello, you beautiful legends, and welcome to Blunt Force Healing Podcast. This is episode number 754, if I'm correct. And today I'll be talking about whatever happened yesterday, which was Sunday, and quite terribly misaligned. While Sunday sounds like a day of sun, it was actually a storm day because the storm Ashley that was hovering over Atlantic and going towards us finally hit the west coast of Ireland. And so far, if I understand it well, there was no deaths reported, at least not ones that were caused directly by anything related to storm. Albeit there was some damage in certain areas. I know that even on on the east coast in Dublin, there were some damages. So these things happen, they go through and across the island and cause some disturbance, but fortunately, they are nowhere near the storms or tornadoes that very often people in the US need to deal with, especially not only in the US because these things happen around the globe in different areas, but I think because of the sheer space and the geo formation of especially Northern America, it seems like a designated spot for those weather anomalies to happen, and we know that they happen every year, and America gets a lot of bashing from those storms, cyclones, hurricanes, whatever comes. It is in the news, and even though we are in Europe, we hear about that and we feel for people that are unfortunate to be victims of that. And obviously, not only the victims that directly died because of that, but lost homes and property or people around them. So, yeah, we do acknowledge that. Obviously, we can't do much about that except for, donating from time to time to support whatever organizations help in restoring the chaos and whatever happened into fair stability for people who suffered. We also need to acknowledge that these things are nature. Yes, we might have some impact over decades in how we manage the earth or whatever we call our civilization and what impact we have on earth. Although from our perspective it might feel like we have huge impact, we don't. And I'm not saying that we don't have any impact, but not necessarily as huge as we claim to have. We still influence the weather and certain things that are happening, that's for sure. Maybe not directly just us, but we do influence that on top of existing processes that happen around the weather and cycles. So we might be boosting certain things or, inhibiting certain processes while causing the ripple effects the other way around. So yeah, I am definitely aware and I agree that we have certain level of impact, but we need to be also unbiased and not get distracted too much by certain groups of people that try to make it either bigger or non-existent. So there are always two sides of the coin. There will be people that will be trying to make it bigger than it is, and there will be people that will say, oh, we have no impact. No, we do. There's always like the truth is in the middle, and we know that. So without further ado, because I already spent 6 minutes talking about weather anomalies, let me just get straight into it. So we knew that Storm Ashley will hit the West Coast and that it might be dangerous and difficult, especially from our perspective as business owners deploying mobile sauna on the trailer near the coast and especially at the beach. So we knew that a couple of saunas and other smaller businesses like the coffee vans and things like that closed for Sunday because they were afraid of consequences and safety measures. And we understood it completely because most of the saunas specifically that we know in the area, they are operating at the piers, and piers are very exposed to the elements like wind and ocean water. So these were the right calls to make to not operate during the storm. We were in a slightly different scenario because we didn't have to deploy on the beach or on the pier. We still have our slightly covered and secluded area, which is just the top of the ramp and the exit to the beach, which is covered on one side and especially on the very influential side if it comes from for the winds. We are basically slightly behind the part of the dune, so we are not directly exposed to the winds. So we decided to deploy and see how it goes. And at the beginning of the day was pretty nice. To be honest, many of the saunas that would be on the pier, they would still have use of 3 or 4 hours in the morning if they deployed, but nobody knew what the weather will be like overnight from Saturday to Sunday. The yellow status given by the meteorological body in Ireland changed to orange warning. So we knew that it's boiling a bit stronger than expected. And initial morning was sunny, dry, and slightly breezy, but not too windy. So it was very hard to believe that something like that storm is coming. The weather was just perfect for a regular sunny day. But as they say, it was really calm before the storm, because after we got our scones or whatever, almond croissants and coffee from the bakery shack and set up the sauna at the ramp, the breeze started picking up, and we had a couple of customers coming because we had a couple of bookings. So we were able to serve them safely. I stabilized the sauna to make sure that any gusts of wind that will come will be not very influential on the sauna itself. So the trailer has 2 stabilizers, and I left it attached to the car. So car and sauna were kind of working together with their mass to stabilize the whole thing even more. And as the wind started picking up, you could definitely feel the gust of winds, and it started being rough closer to noon. And when all the customers were gone, we went ourselves, Elizabeth and myself, to the sauna. And we were a little bit afraid to go to the ocean because it was already quite rough. But we decided to go once. And I'm really happy that we did, because even though it was quite scary and the wind was really strong, the waves were just kind of raging, and you could feel the sheer power of that storm and the ocean together combined. But there was something special about it, going to that water and feeling that chilly wind. You can imagine that it was the absolute temperature was about 12 degrees Celsius, but the felt temperature was like 1 degree. So I might try to actually check how much is it. So 12 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit would be 53.6 Fahrenheit. So 53 Fahrenheit, let's say 54 Fahrenheit was the temperature, absolute temperature given by the thermometer. But the felt temperature from 54 was down to 33, 34. So you can imagine it was quite a drop in terms of how the human felt the temperature versus what the temperature was given by the thermometer. So around 1 o'clock, when we started feeling a real gusts and even stabilized sauna was kind of shaking a bit, we decided to start prepping for departure. And yeah, I removed the stabilizers, and you could really feel that wobbliness of sauna. It was still not bad, and it was still safe to proceed, but we also wanted to have enough time to get out of the beach and ensure that we return safe home. And so we did. We wrapped up around 1:15 p.m. I updated people on Instagram with the stories that we are wrapping up and there will be no deployment in the evening. Well, I said that we might if the weather improves, but I kind of knew that, said that there's no guarantees and it's unlikely, because we knew that the storm is going to bash the coast for another couple of hours until probably late evening, early night. So there was no option to redeploy in the evening. So we returned home. We did a couple of things and prepped some dinner. And after some time we spent at home, I decided to go with Julian and just drive around and see how the storm looks like, because the tide was going high around, it was meant to be around 9 p.m. or something around that, and it was just before sunset. So I took Julian with me and we drove to Rasnaula. It was still raging and the sea was closer, but then we drove a little bit up the cliffs, looked at the beach. It was amazing. I'll pop the picture into the blog post. Then we drove all the way to Krivi Pier, where the other sauna is operating normally, but it wasn't obviously yesterday. And that was really amazing. And you could feel the strong, raging storm in the process. The waves were kind of going over the pier at times. And remember, it was still probably about three hours before the actual high tide, and the water was already way too high in normal terms. So I can only imagine how it was probably flooding those areas at high tide. Then we drove to Bundoran because Julian wanted to see the waves at Tulan Strand, and we were expecting a bit more than we saw, but then the biggest waves we could probably see only if we walked towards Rogi cliff walk, but the wind was so strong that we weren't risking it. It was very dangerous. So we drove back to Donegal town. We stopped at Texaco. I refueled the car, and when I exited the car, it was just the wind was blowing so hard that it was very hard to kind of get the pump nozzle into the car. And once I filled the tank, I just reparked the car, hid in the gas station, and Julian and myself got some coffee and snacks, and we just sat there because there's a small area where you can just sit around and chill. So we spent a bit of time there, and then as the sun was setting, I said to Julian, listen, we need to do one more thing. And we drove all the way to Ini, and I took him on a short loop, about 1.5 kilometers, let's say 1.6, to make it understandable for most of the people in kind of imperial system as well. So about a mile loop across the forest. So not much, but difficult terrain, mostly wild animal tracks to get there. And we went towards an abandoned kind of derelict house that is very creepy. It was very windy, and even in the forest, it felt even more dangerous. We were on the verge of being safe because I could see how many branches were lying on the ground already. But we did our best to protect ourselves and avoid any, old trees that could have fallen or something like that. And we observed the situation, and going through the forest and seeing those trees kind of, swaying around. Then we got to that house. It was pretty quiet there and covered from the wind, so it was okay. But Julian was really scared of that house, maybe because he was watching that Supernatural recently. But yeah, we got a bit wet because it was raining at the same time. We got to a certain point and turned around, came back to the car safely, and drove off. Julian kind of changed his clothes to dry ones. I forgot to take mine, so I didn't have anything to dress into. So I had to stay in the soaking and cold clothes until we came back home. But on the way back home, it was already dusky and kind of little to no light. But I decided to turn into Montcharles Pier and go all the way around the coast and see how bad it's there. And listen, that was probably the funniest part because we were driving along the shore and the waves were going above it. And a couple of times the car was sprayed. Well, it was literally a wave of water coming over the car. And Julian said we had a free car wash at the time, and it was super funny. We were going across the seaweeds on the road, and it was madness of an experience. But yeah, we came back home, and while it was a short trip and short kind of exploration of the coast during the Ashley storm, it will be memorable. It already is, and Julian was pumped because it was very exciting and interesting experience. So yeah, that's way too long. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your time. And I hope you survive those 20 minutes. Have a great rest of the day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Stay tuned and see you again tomorrow.